Okay, there we go.
There it is. Here we are. Hello, Dan. Oh, that sounds nice. Sitting on a rocking chair on the deck of an old shack built in 1800s, overlooking the windswept ocean.
I'd say that's nice.
Does sound nice. Oh, we are doing good, Galaxy. How are you today? What are you up to? We're just putzing around with the settings a little bit. Having some slight technical difficulties trying to get this.
I'll just have the light on. I don't know why. My NVIDIA broadcast isn't doing anything to improve the quality of the video, but we're here for the audio, right?
That's true. We're here to listen. Yeah, I don't know. It was doing that like weird overexposure thing again, and we could not figure out why it was doing the thing, or rather, he couldn't figure it out because I'm not going to try to figure it out. I don't do that. Wouldn't know how to do that. Oh, an exam tomorrow. What kind of exam are we taking tomorrow?
Dang, I feel like you just had an exam.
Chemistry. Yeah, no, I feel like you just took one. Or no, were you writing No, they were writing a paper last time. I have so many exams. That's fair. How do you feel about chemistry? Do you feel confident about chemistry? Just curious, because chemistry was one of those things that I kind of struggled with a little bit. And then, you know. Dan is like, taking the newts, are you? The NEWTs.
That's a little bit better.
I don't like chemistry as I'm a comp sci major, so I'm not great at it. It's one of those things you have to do. Yeah, chemistry doesn't really seem like a computer science necessity, but just like the class you gotta take to get the credit.
I mean, I always liked it. Chemistry.
Oh, I liked it. The math stuff was always hard for me. Hi, Melanie. Sure,
That's like
we could
all of
talk
it.
about portrayals of Dracula in children's. She sent us a thing earlier in the chat about portrayals of Dracula from a child's perspective, talking about the Count from Sesame Street.
Oh yeah, we can do that. I'm sorry, I'm not like speaking a lot. I'm just playing around with settings right now, trying to.
He's trying to fix the problem because this is what happens every time we have a problem. He is like, I must fix it right now. I need
Well,
to
the
figure
problem
it
always
out.
happens like 2 minutes before we're about to stream. But I think that's better. I think I might have fixed the whole white issue.
Only got part way through chemistry. We moved. Classes were different at different years in high school, so I lost out. I mean, the math part of chemistry was the not fun part. But I liked the ideas and the theories, etc., of chemistry. I always found very interesting.
The actually funny story. I have failed one class in my life, and it was chemistry. And it wasn't because I was bad at it. I just was so lazy that year. I didn't do any work, and I ended up getting like a 99 on our regions and like a 100 on our final exam. But none of that was enough to boost me to passing. I
Well,
got a 64 as my final grade.
I mean, you failed everything else.
Well, yeah,
Oh, no, you don't get to pass the class just because you passed the regents in the final.
but I was so close.
Well, you guess you should have just tried a little bit harder.
I mean, I should have, but I just found it easy though. So like I was bored and I just never did like homework or anything.
You'd have just done the assignment, you probably could have passed.
I probably
You'd have just done the one.
learn from my mistakes. Do your homework.
Do your homework. Anyway, so like Melanie was saying, portrayals of Dracula and vampires in children's media. The first one that did come to mind was Count.
The Count, like Count Chocula.
Count Chocula too. But no, the Count. One.
Oh yeah, Sesame Street.
Two.
I feel like we could be here for a while now that I'm thinking about it, because yeah, Count Chocula, you have that Count.
I always liked the Count from Sesame Street. He was one of my favorites.
He was great. Are you kidding me?
He was always one of my I liked him. Count Chocula I am familiar with. I am not familiar with the Groovy Ghoulies or Mad Monster Party.
I've heard of Mad Monster Party, never heard of Groovy Ghoulies, but that sounds awesome.
I am familiar with Hotel Transylvania.
Oh yeah, there's another one.
Very familiar with Hotel Transylvania.
Yeah, I had to watch that quite a bit.
Was not really into it.
I thought it was okay. I didn't hate it.
It was honestly, the vampires were the thing that I liked the least about those movies.
That's fair.
I liked the Wolfman and the Invisible Man and them. Like, I liked the little gang of them. I thought they were great.
Does Twilight count as
That's young adult.
Yeah.
That's not children's. Yeah, I know. I wasn't into Mavis. Dracula
Oh.
having a daughter was a weird thing to me.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, he kind of does, though. You know, he has I guess his wives.
They're his wives. They're not his children.
But we had that theory. Maybe one of them was, he changed his wife and his daughter into vampires.
No, Biggs, it does not count.
But
Saturday
I mean,
Night
it's
Morning
written like
Cartoon.
it's a child's reading level, so it should count as
What is a child's reading?
Twilight.
No, it's young adult. I mean, yeah, it is a kid's reading level, but the content is young adult.
I know the joke was that it's bad writing.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. There was also a show that Ramona used to watch when she was little, Vampirina.
Oh yeah, Vampirina.
That was not good.
No, but it was also like a preschooler show.
It was a preschooler show, but it was not good. And then what was that other one?
What was the one where it was like
All the
a
little
daycare or a school?
It was like a little monster school daycare, and they had like Dracula, the Wolfman, and everyone.
Yeah, and you had Dracula, and then he had was it a son or a daughter that he'd drop off at school? Little vampire kid.
Little vampire kid, yep. And then there was like a little witch. There was a zombie.
Mm-hmm.
The zombies showed up at like the middle of. It was kind of like Muppet Babies, but they were little monsters, and they were like little preschool monsters. And there was a Dracula kid. Oh, what was the name of that show? I gotta look it up now. Monster Baby. It's probably called like Monster Baby, something not creative.
I'm most likely.
Super Monsters. Oh my god, Super Monsters. Yep. There was a little dragon. Cleopatra was in it.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Look at it. All comes back to you, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
Super Monsters.
Yeah, it was a son. Okay. Yeah, Little Drac.
Little Drac. That's what they called him. Little Drac. It was not a great show. The teacher of the preschool looked kind of like Dumbledore.
Maybe a little. I can't
He
remember.
kind of had Dumbledore energy.
Oh yeah, I can see it.
Yeah. It, vampires are one of those things I feel like that they put they're like our like school age children things. But I feel like vampires do tend to be more of like an older kid to young adult kind of a thing
Yeah.
because of the like sexual aspect to what they do and all that.
Yeah, but I think they're also just kind of like a cool monster. Like kids love to be it for like Halloween and
Yeah,
stuff.
that's true. That's true.
Like the old school go-to like costume.
Yeah, I mean it's a classic.
It's almost as classic as the bed sheet with the holes in it being the ghost.
Yeah, being a ghost. Yeah, that's true.
And then you get to wear like the teeth and everything and
fake blood on your lips, all that stuff.
yeah, it's fun.
Groovy Ghoulies, 1970. Yeah.
There was a duck vampire? What?
Groovy Ghoulies.
E.T.'s ghost costume.
My god, this is very 70s looking.
Well, it was made in the 70s.
I know, but it's like very, yeah. It's very, and the thing about all the television shows, all the like kids versions, like Dracula always very much looks like Bela Lugosi Dracula every time. He's always got the cape and all that. I remember the duck vampire, but not its name. Like DuckTales or Darkwing Duck. What?
I remember Darkwing Duck. I used to love that.
I tried to watch Darkwing Duck again.
Yeah, you convinced me not to.
It was not good.
You said it wasn't good.
It says
I
his
have great
name is
memories
Count
of it.
Duckula. Count Duckula.
I will quack your blood.
All right, okay. Vampire story for kids. Benincula.
Oh yeah, there you go.
There you go.
Benincula.
Benincula vampire story for kids. Rabbit that sucks the juice out of all the vegetables. There you go. There's another one.
I feel like I'm way too young for this discussion.
I felt a little young for Groovy Ghoulies. I was like, yeah, don't know anything about that one. Yeah, Benincula's great. Benincula's fantastic. All right. Are we ready to start?
I think so.
Okay. Where we're at?
Yeah, it was chapter 11, right? That we got to?
I believe so.
Okay. Then yes. Go ahead and read this chapter, and then next I'll play with the camera more.
Oh,
I'll
my
see
goodness.
I'll see if the light works. What?
All right, well, give me the... Can I have the...
Okay.
Okay, here we go. All right. Chapter 11. Lucy Westenra's Diary. 12th of September. How good they are all to me. I quite love that dear Dr. Van Helsing. I wonder why he was so anxious about these flowers. He positively frightened me, he was so fierce. And yet he must have been right, for I feel comfort from them already. Somehow I do not dare dread being alone tonight, and I can sleep without fear. I shall not mind any flapping outside the window. Oh, the terrible struggle that I have had against sleep so often of late, the pain of the sleeplessness, or the pain of the fear of sleep, with such unknown horrors as it has for me. How blessed are some people whose lives have no fears, no dreads, to whom sleep is a blessing that comes nightly and brings nothing but sweet dreams. Well, here I am tonight hoping for sleep and lying like Ophelia in the play, with virgin krantz and maiden strewments. I never liked garlic before, but tonight it is delightful. There is peace in its smell. I can feel sleep coming already. Good night, everybody. Dr. Seward's Diary. 13th of September. Called at the Berkeley and found Van Helsing, as usual, up to time. The carriage ordered from the hotel was waiting. The professor took his bag, which he always brings with him now. Let all be put down exactly. Van Helsing and I arrived at Illingham at 8 o'clock. It was a lovely morning. The bright sunshine and all the fresh feeling of early autumn seemed like the completion of nature's annual work. The leaves were turning to all kinds of beautiful colours, but had not yet begun to drop from the trees. When we entered, we met Mrs. Westenra coming out of the morning room. She is always an early riser. She greeted us warmly and said, "You will be glad to know that Lucy is better. The dear child is still asleep. I looked into her room and saw her, but did not go in, lest I should disturb her." The professor smiled and looked quite jubilant. He rubbed his hands together and said, "Aha! I thought I had diagnosed the case. My treatment is working." To which she answered, "You must not take all the credit to yourself, doctor. Lucy's state this morning is due in part to me." "How do you mean, ma'am?" asked the professor. "Well, I was anxious about the dear child in the night and went to her room. She was sleeping soundly, so soundly that even my coming didn't wake her. But the room was awfully stuffy. There were a lot of those horrible strong-smelling flowers about everywhere, and she had actually a bunch of them round her neck. I feared that the heavy odour would be too much for the dear child in her weak state, so I took them all away and opened a bit of the window to let in a little fresh air. You will be pleased with her, I'm sure." She moved off into her boudoir, where she usually breakfasted early. As she had spoken, I watched the professor's face, and saw it turn ashen grey. He had been able to retain his self-command whilst the poor lady was present, for he knew her state and how mischievous a shock would be. He actually smiled on her as he held open the door for her to pass into her room. But the instant she had disappeared, he pulled me, suddenly and forcibly, into the dining room and closed the door. Then, for the first time in my life, I saw Van Helsing break down. He raised his hands over his head in a sort of mute despair, and then beat his palms together in a helpless way. Finally he sat down on a chair, and putting his hands before his face, began to sob, with loud, dry sobs that seemed to come from the very racking of his heart. Then he raised his arms again, as though appealing to the whole universe. "God, God, God," he said, "what have we done? What has this poor thing done that we are so sore beset? Is there fate among us still, set down from the pagan world of old, that such things must be, and in such way? This poor mother, all unknowing, and all for the best as she think, does such thing as lose her daughter body and soul. And we must not tell her. We must not even warn her, or she die, and then both die. Oh, how we are beset! How are all the powers of the devils against us?" Suddenly he jumped to his feet. "Come," he said. "Come, we must see and act. Devils or no devils, or all the devils at once. It matters not. We fight him all the same." He went to the hall door for his bag, and together we went up to Lucy's room. Once again I drew up the blind, and whilst Van Helsing went to the bed. This time he did not start as he looked on the poor face with the same awful waxen pallor as before. He took a look of stern sadness and infinite pity. "As I expected," he murmured, with that hissing inspiration of his which meant so much. Without a word he went and locked the door, and then began to set out on the little table the instruments for yet another transfusion of blood. I had long ago recognized the necessity and begun to take off my coat, but he stopped me with a warning hand. "No," he said. "Today you must operate. I shall provide. You are weakened already." As he spoke, he took off his coat and rolled up his shirt sleeve. Again the operation, again the narcotic, again some return of colour to ashy cheeks, and the regular breathing of heavy sleep. This time I watched while Van Helsing recruited himself and rested. Presently he took an opportunity of telling Mrs. Westenra that she must not remove anything from Lucy's room without consulting him, that the flowers were of medicinal value, and that the breathing of their odour was part of the system of cure. Then he took over the care of the case himself, saying that he would watch this night and the next, and would send me word when to come. After another hour, Lucy waked from her sleep, fresh and bright, and seemingly not much the worse for her terrible ordeal. What does it all mean? I'm beginning to wonder if my long habit of life amongst the insane is beginning to tell upon my own brain. Lucy Westenra's diary. 17th of September. 4 days and nights of peace. I am getting so strong again that I hardly know myself. It is as if I had passed through some long nightmare, and had just awakened to see the beautiful sunshine, and feel the fresh air of the morning around me. I have a dim half-remembrance of long, anxious times of waiting and fearing, darkness in which there was not even the pain of hope to make present distress more poignant, and then long spells of oblivion, and the rising back to life as a diver coming up through a great press of water. However, since Dr. Van Helsing has been with me, all this bad dreaming seems to have passed away. The voices that used to frighten me out of my wits, the flapping against the windows, the distant voices that seemed so close to me, the harsh sounds that came from I know not where, and commanded me to do I know not what, have all ceased. I go to bed now without any fear of sleep. I do not even try to keep awake. I've grown quite fond of the garlic, and a boxful arrives for me every day from Haarlem. Tonight Dr. Van Helsing is going away, as he has to be for a day in Amsterdam. But I need not be watched. I am well enough to be left alone. Thank God for mother's sake and dear Arthur, and all our friends who've been so kind. I shall not even feel the change, for last night Dr. Van Helsing slept in his chair a lot of the time. I found him asleep twice when I woke, but did not fear to go to sleep again, although the boughs or bats or something napped almost angrily against the window panes. The Pall Mall Gazette, 18th of September. The Escaped Wolf. Perilous adventure of our interviewer. Interview with the keeper in the Zoological Gardens. After many inquiries and almost as many refusals, and perpetually using the words Pall Mall Gazette as a sort of talisman, I have managed to find the keeper of the section of the Zoological Gardens in which the wolf department is included. Thomas Builder lives in one of the cottages on the enclosure behind the Elephant House, and was just sitting down to his tea when I found him. Thomas and his wife are hospitable folk, elderly and without children, and if the specimen I enjoyed of their hospitality be of the average kind, their lives must be pretty comfortable. The keeper would not enter on what he called business until the supper was over, and when we were all satisfied. Then, when the table was cleared and he'd lit his pipe, he said, "Now, sir, you can go on and ask me what you want. You'll excuse me refusing to talk of professional subjects before meals. It gives the wolves and the jackals and the hyenas in all our section their tea before I begins to ask them question. I gives the wolves and the jackals and the hyenas in all our section their tea before I begins to ask them questions." "How do you mean, ask them questions?" I queried, wishful to get him into a talkative humour. "Hitting them over the head with a pole is one way, scratching of their ears is another. When gents is flush wants a bit of show off to their gals, I don't so much mind a fuss. They hit 'em with a pole before I chucks in their dinner, but I waits till they've had their sherry and coffee, so to speak, before I tries on with the ear scritching. Mind you," he added philosophically, "there's a deal of the same nature in us as them there animals. Here's you a coming and asking of me questions about my business, and I that grumpy like that, only for your bloomin' half-quid, I'd a seed you blowed fust before I'd answer. Not even when you asked me sarcastic like if I'd like to ask the superintendent if you might ask me questions. What without offence did I tell you to go tell? You did. And when you said you report me for using of obscene language, that was hitting me over the head, but the half-quid made it all right. I weren't a-going to fight. so I waited for the food, and did with my owl as the wolves and lions and tigers does. But Lord love you out now that this old ooman has stuck a chunk of her tea cake in me and rinsed me out with her bloomin' old teapot, and I've lit up. You may scratch my ears for all you're worth, and don't get even a growl out of me. Drive along with your questions. I know what you're a-coming at, that there escaped wolf. Exactly. I want you to give me your view of it. Just tell me how it happened, and when I know the facts, I'll get you to say what you consider was the cause of it, and how you think the whole affair will end. All right, Governor. This here about the whole story. That here wolf, what we call Berserker, was one of the 3 grey ones that come from Norway to Jamrax, which we bought off him 4 years ago. He was a nice, well-behaved wolf that never gave no trouble to talk of. I'm more surprised at him for wanting to get out nor any other animal in this place. But there, you can't trust wolves no more than women. Don't you mind him, sir, broke in Mrs. Tom with a cheery laugh. He's got minding the animals so long that bless if he ain't like old wolf himself. There ain't no harm in him. Well, sir, it was about 2 hours after feeding yesterday when I found out when I first hear my disturbance. I was making up a litter in the monkey house for a young puma which is ill. But when I heard the yelping and howling, I kept him straight. There was Berserker a-tearing like a mad thing at the bars, as if he wanted to get out. There wasn't much people about that day, and close at hand was only one man, a tall, thin chap with a hooked nose and a pointy beard, and a few white hairs running through it. He had a hard, cold look and red eyes, and I took a mislike to him, for it seemed as if it was him they was irritated at. He had white kid gloves in his hands, and he pointed out the animals to me and says, "Keeper, these wolves seem upset or summit." "Maybe it's you," says I, for I did not like the airs as he give himself. He didn't get angry as I hoped he would, but he smiled a kind of insolent smile with a mouth full of white sharp teeth. "Oh no, they wouldn't like me," he says. "Oh yes they would," says I, imitating of him. "They always likes a bone or two to clean their teeth with on tea time, which you has a bagful." Well, it was an odd thing when the animals see us talking, they lay down, and when I went over to Berserker, he let me stroke his ears same as ever. That there man came over, and blessed but if he didn't put in his hand and stroke the old wolf's ears too. "Take care," says I. "Berserker is quick." "Never mind," he says. "I'm used to 'em." "Are you in a business yourself?" I says, taking off me hat, for a man that trades in wolves, and cetera, is a good friend of keepers. "No," says he, "not exactly in the business, but I've made pets of several." And with that he lifts his as a perlite as a lord and walks away. Old Berserker kept a-looking after him till he was out of sight, and then went and laid down in a corner, and wouldn't come out the whole evening. Well, last night, so soon as the moon was up, the wolves were all began a-howling. There weren't nothing for 'em to howl at. There weren't no one near, except one that was evidently a-calling a dog somewheres out the back of the gardens in the park road. Once or twice I went out to see it was all right, and it was, and then the howling stopped. Just before 12 o'clock I took a look round before turning in, and burst me, but when I came opposite to old Berserker's cage, I see the rails broken and twisted about and the cage empty. And that's all I knew for certain. Did anyone else see anything? Oh, one of our gardeners was coming round about that time from an harmony, but he sees a big grey dog coming out through the garden edges. At least so he says, but I don't give much for it myself. For if he ever did say a word about it to his missus when he got home, and it was only after the escape of the wolf was known, and we'd been up all the night hunting of the park for Berserker, that he remembered seeing anything. My own belief was that the harmony got into his head. Now, Mr. Builder, can you account in any way for the escape of the wolf? Well, sir, he said with a suspicious sort of modesty, I think I can, but I don't know as you'd be satisfied with the theory. Certainly I shall. If a man like you, who knows the animals from experience, can't hazard a good guess at any rate, who is even to try? Certainly I will. If a man like you, who knows the animals from Oh, well then, sir, I accounts for it this way. It seems to me that 'ere wolf escaped simply 'cause he wanted to get out." From the hearty way that both Thomas and his wife laughed at the joke, I could see that it had done service before, and that the whole explanation was simply an elaborate sell. I couldn't cope in badinage with the worthy Thomas, but I thought I knew a surer way to his heart. So I said, Now, Mr. Builder, we'll consider that first half-sovereign worked off, and this brother of his is waiting to be claimed when you've told me what you think will happen." "Right you are, sir," he said briskly. "You'll excuse me. You know, I know for a cheffin of you, but the old woman here winked at me, which was as much as telling me to go on." "Well, I never," said the old lady. "My opinion is this. That 'ere wolf is hiding off somewheres. That gardener what didn't remember said he was a galloping northward faster than a horse could go, but I don't believe him. For you see, sir, wolves don't gallop no more than dogs does. They not being built that way. Wolves is fine things in a storybook, and I dare say when they get in packs and does be chiving up something that's more afeard than they is, they can make a devil of a noise and chop it up wherever it is. But Lord bless you, in real life a wolf is only a low creature, not half so clever as bold as a good dog, and not half a quarter so much fight in him. This one ain't been used to fighting or even to providing for himself, and more like he's somewhere round the park a hiding and a shivering of, and if he thinks at all, wondering where he's going to get his breakfast from, or maybe he's got down some tea and or maybe he's got down some area and is in a coal cellar. My eye, won't some cook get a rum start when she sees his green eyes are shining at her out of the dark? If he can't get food, he's bound to look for it, and mayhap he may chance to light on a butcher's shop in time. If he doesn't, and some nursemaid goes a-walking off with a soldier, leaving her the infant in the perambulator, well, then I wouldn't be surprised if the census is one babby less. That's all." I was handing him the half-sovereign when something came bobbing up against the window, and Mr. Builder's face doubled its natural length with surprise. "God bless me," he said. "If that ain't old Berserker come back by himself." He went to the door and opened it, a most unnecessary proceeding it seemed to me. I've always thought that a wild animal never looks so well as when some obstacle of profound durability is between us. A personal experience has intensified rather than diminished that idea. After all, however, there is nothing like custom, for neither Builder nor his wife thought any more of the wolf than I should of a dog. The animal itself was as peaceful and well-behaved as that father of all picture wolves, Red Riding Hood's quondam friend, whilst moving her confidence in masquerade. The whole scene was an unutterable mixture of comedy and pathos. That wicked wolf that for half a day had paralysed London and set all the children in the town shivering in their shoes, was there in a sort of penitent mood, and was received and petted like a sort of vulpine prodigal son. Old Builder examined him all over with most tender solicitude, and when he had finished with his penitent, said, "There, I knew the poor chap would get into some kind of trouble. Didn't I say it all along? Here's his head all cut and full of broken glass. He's been a-getting over some bloomin' wall or summit. It's a shame people are allowed to top their walls with broken bottles. This here's what comes of it. Go along, Berserker." He took the wolf and locked him up in a cage with a piece of meat that satisfied, in quantity at any rate, the elementary conditions of the fatted calf, and went off to report. I came too, to report the only exclusive information that is given today regarding the strange escapade at the zoo. Dr. Seward's Diary, 17th of September. I was engaged after dinner in my study, posting up my books, which, though press of other work and the many visits to Lucy, had fallen sadly into arrear. Suddenly the door burst open, and in rushed my patient, with his face distorted with passion. I was thunderstruck, for such a thing as a patient getting of his own accord into the superintendent's study is almost unknown. Without an instant's pause, he made straight at me. He had a dinner knife in his hand, and, as I saw he was dangerous, I tried to keep the table between us. He was too quick and too strong for me, however, for before I could get my balance he had struck at me and cut my left wrist rather severely. Before he could strike again, however, I got in my right and he was sprawling on his back on the floor. My wrist bled freely, and quite a little pool trickled onto the carpet. I saw that my friend was not intent on further effort, and occupied myself binding up my wrist, keeping a wary eye on the prostrate figure all the time. When the attendants rushed in and we turned our attention to him, his employment positively sickened me. He was lying on his belly on the floor, licking up, like a dog, the blood which had fallen from my wounded wrist. He was easily secured, and to my surprise, went with the attendants quite placidly, simply repeating over and over again, "The blood is the life! The blood is the life!" Cannot afford to lose blood just at the present. I've lost too much of late for my physical good, and the prolonged strain of Lucy's illness and its horrible phases is telling on me. I am overexcited and weary, and I need rest, rest, rest. Happily Van Helsing has not summoned me, so I need not forgo my sleep. Tonight I could not well do without it. Telegram, Van Helsing, Antwerp, to Seward, Carfax. Sent to Carfax, Sussex, as no county given, delivered late by 22 hours. 17th of September. Do not fail to be at Illingham tonight. If not watching all the time frequently, visit and see that flowers are as placed. Very important. Do not fail. Shall be with you as soon as possible after arrival. Dr. Seward's diary. 18th of September. Just off for train to London. The arrival of Van Helsing's telegram filled me with dismay. A whole night lost, and I know by bitter experience what may happen in a night. Of course, it is possible that all may be well, but what may have happened? Surely there is some horrible doom hanging over us that every possible accident should thwart us in all we try to do. I shall take this cylinder with me, and then I can complete my entry on Lucy's phonograph. Memorandum left by Lucy Westenra. 17th of September, night. I write this and leave it to be seen, so that no one may by any chance get into trouble through me. This is an exact record of what took place tonight. I feel I am dying of weakness, and have barely strength enough to write, but it must be done if I die in the doing. I went to bed as usual, taking care that the flowers were placed as Dr. Van Helsing directed, and soon fell asleep. I was waked by the flapping at the window, which had begun after the sleepwalking on the cliff at Whitby, when Mina saved me, and which now I know so well. I was not afraid, but I did wish that Dr. Stewart was in the next room, as Dr. Van Helsing said he would be, that I might have called him. I tried to go to sleep, but could not. Then there came to me the old fear of sleep, and I determined to keep awake. Perversely, sleep would try to come then when I did not want it. So as I feared to be alone, I opened my door and called out, "Is anybody there?" There was no answer. I was afraid to wake my mother, so closed my door again. Then outside in the shrubbery, I heard a sort of howl like a dog's, but more fierce and deeper. I went to the window and looked out, but could see nothing, except a big bat, which had evidently been buffeting its wings against the window. So I went back to bed again, but determined not to go to sleep. Presently the door opened and Mother looked in. Seeing by my moving that I was not asleep, came in and sat by me. She said to me even more sweetly and softly than her wont, "I am uneasy about you, darling, and came in to see that you were all right." I feared she might catch cold sitting there, and asked her to come in and sleep with me. So she came into bed and lay down beside me. She did not take off her dressing-gown, for she said she would only stay a while and then go back to her own bed. As she lay there in my arms, and I in hers, the flapping and buffeting came to the window again. She was startled and a little frightened, and cried out, "What is that?" I tried to pacify her, and at last succeeded, and she lay quiet, but I could hear her poor dear heart still beating terribly. After a while there was a low howl again out in the shrubbery, and shortly after there was a crash at the window, and a lot of broken glass was hurled on the floor. The window blind blew back with the wind that rushed in, and in the aperture of the broken panes there was the head of a great, gaunt, grey wolf. Mother cried out in a fright and struggled up into a sitting posture and clutched wildly at anything that would help her. Amongst other things, she clutched the wreath of flowers that Dr. Van Helsing insisted on my wearing round my neck and tore it away from me. For a second or two she sat up, pointing at the wolf, and there was a strange and horrible gurgling in her throat. Then she fell over, as if struck with lightning, and her head hit my forehead and made me dizzy for a moment or two. The room and all around seemed to spin round. I kept my head fixed out the window, but the wolf drew his head back, and a whole myriad of little specks seemed to come blowing in through the broken window and wheeling and circling round like the pillar of dust that travellers describe when there is a sea moon in the desert. I tried to stir, but there was some spell upon me, and dear mother's poor body, which seemed to grow cold already, for her dear heart ceased to beat, weighed me down, and I remembered no more for a while. The time did not seem long, but very, very awful, till I recovered consciousness again. Somewhere near, a passing bell was tolling. The dogs all round the neighbourhood were howling, and in our shrubbery, seemingly just outside, a nightingale was singing. I was dazed and stupid with pain and terror and weakness, but the sound of the nightingale seemed like the voice of my dead mother come back to comfort me. The sound seemed to have weakened the maids too, for I could hear their bare feet pattering outside my door. I called to them and they came in, and when they saw what had happened, and what it was that lay over me on the bed, they screamed out. The wind rushed in through the broken window, and the door slammed to. They lifted off the body of my poor dear mother and laid her, covered up with a sheet, on the bed after I had got up. They were all so frightened and nervous that I directed them to the dining room and have each a glass of wine. The door flew open for an instant and closed again. The maids shrieked and then went in a body to to the dining room, and I laid what flowers I had on my dear mother's breast. When they were there, I remembered what Dr. Van Helsing had told me, but I didn't like to remove them. And besides, I would have some of the servants to sit up with me now. I was surprised when the maids did not come back. I called them but got no answer, so I went to the dining room to look for them. My heart sank when I saw what had happened. They all four lay helpless on the floor, breathing heavily. The decanter of sherry was on the table half full, but there was a queer, acrid smell about. I was suspicious and examined the decanter. It smelt of laudanum, and looking on the sideboard I found the bottle which my mother's doctor uses for her was empty. What am I to do? What am I to do? I am back in the room with mother. I cannot leave her, and I am alone, save for the sleeping servants, whom someone has drugged. Alone with the dead. I dare not go out, for I fear the low howl of the wolf through the broken. For I can hear the low howl of the wolf through the broken window. The air seems full of specks, floating and circling in the draught from the window, and the lights burn blue and dim. What am I to do? God, shield me from harm this night. I shall hide this paper to my breast, where they shall find it when they come to lay me out. My dear mother is gone. It is time that I go too. Goodbye, dear Arthur, if I should not survive this night. God keep you, dear, and God help me.
Well, what an ending.
Oh boy.
Think she's gonna die?
Well, I know what's gonna.
Yeah, she's gonna die. But what did I see? Yeah, Galaxy found an academic article discussing Lucy's blood type.
Oh,
I
yeah?
think after the next chapter, we should check that out. Because, yeah, everyone's just, wheeling blood around. Like, yeah, just take this blood. It'll be fine. Same thing, right? Because apparently, plot is thicker than blood.
Yeah, I was thinking about it as I read it, just like, everyone's giving her blood. She must be a universal receiver. Like, it's the only way.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Because,
it hasn't really helped too much, so.
well, it helps a little bit, and then people keep messing it up.
I know. Yeah, I took away the flowers. Oh my god. Van Helsing, I wish I could have seen his face then.
Yeah. Yeah, just, oh, oh, you did. Oh.
Poor or not poor Jackson.
Yeah. That's the wrong way for pets. Oh, we're just upset now.
Yeah, we're upset. Yeah, I don't know. Like Van Helsing had a plan. He was like, I can do this. And everyone was just like, no, I don't think we're going to let you do that.
The whole thing with the telegram, literally right before Dr. Seward is like, oh, I'm on my way. Hopefully nothing happens. Everything happened. Literally everything happened. The wolf, the mom died, the window broke, like everything
Poisons.
happened. Oh, that's okay, Dan. I get it. If you're getting chilly, just go inside for sure.
Yeah, they definitely didn't understand blood. We looked it up. What was it, like 1890 or something? They discovered blood types.
Yeah.
So it was like a couple decades after this was written.
I don't remember the year in which this was written. Let me look real quick.
So yeah, around the time that this was written, blood types weren't understood.
No,
So
it was written in 1897.
Oh well, you know what? Screw Bram Stoker then. Do your research, bud.
Oh. He says he's come up with some good names. All right. Shoot him our way. We want to hear it. I scrolled down. I don't know. I scroll down as I read it, so maybe I scrolled to Melanie's like, "What happened? I was looking at another page."
Oh yeah,
I don't know.
so
I think
just when you're scrolling, like that's basically the cutoff right there.
also
Maybe that was it.
can we also just have a brief shout out for the zookeeper in the chapter?
Of course. Working with the wolves.
And the yeens.
Yeah.
And a sick cougar.
Yeah, it does kind of sound like you. But what the heck? Dracula's out here, like, he's, like, not killing people?
All right, see y'all later. I heard a kind of yelp or screech. Did something happen with the cat?
Oh, yeah. Jackson got mad at our other cat.
There was a small cat fight.
But,
So, yes, somebody did. Yeah, I think I said, "Ah, Lil."
yeah.
Lil. Lil.
What was I going to say? I totally lost my train of thought there.
I don't know.
Oh, yeah. What's with Dracula, like, not killing anyone? Like, he's a vampire. Isn't he hungry? He's just out here just like, oh, what a nice wolf you have. Good boy. Just chit-chatting with this guy, then just leaving him alone. And then, you got a bunch of servants, just appetizers waiting for you. You're like, I'll just put him to sleep.
He just wants Lucy's blood right now. Doing the thing.
So picky.
Okay, we'll see you in a few.
Well, I mean, maybe that's it. Maybe that's the reasoning. That's why Lucy can have all this blood, is because she's that special. Her blood is magic.
Well, I think I also don't think, you're going to drain somebody in a single evening.
Why not?
Maybe you don't need to. But you also notice that the description of him, his hair is darker, got a beard now, a little bit of gray.
Mm-hmm.
So the more blood he's drinking, the younger he's. So, I think also it is, if you just drain somebody of their blood, they're dead. You just drained them of their blood. But, I mean, is he, like, trying to turn Lucy?
Yeah, that's how it's done. You have to, they have to drink so much of their blood, so you're just, at a point between life and death. That's how you turn into the vampire.
Potentially.
So what do you think, all the imagery of the black spots floating in are?
The dust particle thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I just noticed that. I was trying to piece it together, and I'm not quite sure, how I want to lean on that.
It reminds me of when Emotep comes in as just sand, and then he, materializes.
At first, I thought it was going to be, it was actually, the bats,
Yeah.
I also think it's, these black specks, maybe, death is slowly coming.
It reminds me of the mist, too, in the third task in Harry Potter. The mist that Harry walks into, and then all of a sudden he's upside down.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just some kind of, sleeping agent that Dracula put into the hair.
No, because they said that the wine, right? The wine was poisoned?
Yeah, but Lucy, saw the dust blow in and then, passed out. And then
maybe.
woke up, and then the servants came. And then the servants were.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so maybe some sort of, little, sleeping dust?
Agent?
Fairy dust
kind
thing?
of thing. Yeah.
It's the equivalent of pixie dust, but vampire dust.
Yeah. Maybe.
Maybe.
And now we know what the wolf was up to.
Yep.
Poor guy.
Who puts broken bottles on their wall? Was that ever a thing? I mean, I guess it must have been a thing.
Yeah, it must have been
But
a
still.
thing. Yeah, it's messed up, right?
Yeah.
Dracula is a bit of a sadist. Yeah, he likes to prolong it and savor it.
Yeah, I mean, Dracula is supposed to represent the devil. He's pure evil.
He's pure
Which is
evil.
why you notice in a lot of so we're talking about kids shows, but in modern day cartoons, shows and stuff, when someone's depicted as the devil, they usually have, that little beard, the dark hair with a little bit of gray, just how Dracula is depicted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
100%. Why that is the face of evil, whether it's because of this or something else that happened in the world that Bram Stoker took from to use it, I don't know, but that's definitely something that he may have influenced.
I think the dark hair and the beard is to show the contrast between the white-haired old man and the more facial hair and the darker hair is the returning of youth and virility.
Well, yeah, I'm just saying this image of him is a way that a lot of modern day depictions of the devil in human form look like?
Galaxy said, so I did some research. Blood has 700 calories per liter. The average woman has 4.5 liters of blood. So the amount of blood Dracula drinks per meal is actually pretty realistic.
There it is.
There it is.
See?
So that's why he doesn't necessarily want to kill her.
So Dracula needs about one person a day.
Yeah, I mean, if he's eating 3 meals a day.
Well, yeah. But
3 to 4. Yeah.
I mean, the average person usually needs somewhere in the range, depending on how big you are. Like, I know 2,000's like the average, but like,
yeah,
being a rather tall, like large male that Dracula is, probably needs somewhere in the range of 2,500 to 3,000. So that's like spot on.
Yeah.
One person a day.
Yep. We also don't know anything about his metabolism, how quickly he metabolizes calories.
I think we could honestly probably calculate it, just because how fast does he regain his youth?
Yeah, that's true.
Because what was it? It was only like
Alistair said that does make sense, because that makes sense why he killed the crew members. Like,
yeah. And then we also saw that like he regained his youthfulness within the same day, basically, of consuming someone at the castle.
mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true.
Was it the kid, I think?
Oh, he gave the kid to the wives.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if, they all had a sit-down meal.
I think the kid was... I mean, I don't know.
Either way, we can guess that vampire metabolism is probably close to humans.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Shall we go on to the next one?
Yeah, we can. Because I'm going to go down this whole rabbit hole of calculating metabolism of the basal metabolic rate of
the personal
vampires.
Trainer comes to the rescue for vampire metabolic necessities. Here we go. How many macros does Dracula need to get them gains? Find out. After chapter 12. All right, here we go. Chapter 12. Dr. Seward's diary. He's going to be so upset. He's got to walk in on this. Then we're going to guilt trip. I bet money on it. 18th of September. I drove at once to Hillingham and arrived early. Keeping my cab at the gate, I went up the avenue alone. I knocked gently and rang as quietly as possible, for I feared to disturb Lucy or her mother, and hoped to only bring a servant to the door. After a while, finding no response, I knocked and rang again. Still no answer. I cursed the laziness of the servants that they should lie abed at such an hour, for it was now 10 o'clock, and so rang and knocked again, but more impatiently, but still without response. Hitherto I had blamed only the servants, but now a terrible fear began to assail me. Was this desolation but another link in the chain of doom which it seemed drawing tight around us? Was it indeed a house of death to which I had come too late? I knew that minutes, even seconds of delay might mean hours of danger to Lucy if she had again one of those frightful relapses, and I went round the house to try if I could find by chance an entry anywhere. I could find no means of ingress. Every window and door was fastened and locked, and I returned baffled to the porch. As I did so, I heard the rapid pit-pat of a swiftly driven horse's feet. They stopped at the gate, and a few seconds later I met Van Helsing running up the avenue. When he saw me, he gasped out, "Then it was you, and just arrived. How is she? Are we too late? Did you not get my telegram?" I answered as quickly and coherently as I could that I'd only got his telegram early in the morning, and had lost not a minute in coming here, and that I could not make anyone in the house answer me, and anyone in the house hear me. He paused and raised his hat as he said solemnly, Then I fear we are too late. God's will be done. With his usual recuperative energy, he went on, Come, if there be no way to open to get in, we must make one. Time is all in all to us now. We went round to the back of the house where there was a kitchen window. The professor took a small surgical saw from his case and, handing it to me, pointed to the iron bars which guarded the window. I attacked them at once and had very soon cut through 3 of them. Then, with a long, thin knife, we pushed back the fastening of the sashes and opened the window. I helped the professor in and followed him. There was no one in the kitchen or the servants' rooms, which were close at hand. We tried all the rooms as we went along, and in the dining room, dimly lit by rays of light through the shutters, found 4 servant women lying on the floor. There was no need to think them dead, for their stertorous breathing and the acrid smell of laudanum in the room left no doubt as to their condition. Van Helsing and I looked at each other, and as we moved away, he said, We can attend to them later. Then we entered. Then we ascended to Lucy's room. For an instant or two we paused at the door to listen, but there was no sound that we could hear. With white faces and trembling hands, we opened the door gently and entered the room. How shall I describe what we saw? On the bed lay 2 women, Lucy and her mother. The latter lay farthest in, and she was covered with a white sheet, the edge of which had been blown back by the draught through the broken window, showing the drawn white face with a look of terror fixed upon it. By her side lay Lucy, with face white and still more drawn. The flowers which had been placed round her neck we found upon her mother's bosom, and her throat was bare, showing the 2 little wounds which we had noticed before, but looking terribly white and mangled. Without a word, the professor bent over the bed, his head almost touching poor Lucy's breast, when he gave a quick turn of the head, as of one who listens, and leaping to his feet, he cried out to me, "It is not yet too late. Quick, quick, bring the brandy." I flew downstairs, and returning with it, taking care to smell and taste it, lest it too were drugged like the decanter of sherry which I found on the table. The maids were still breathing, but more restlessly, and I fancied that the narcotic was wearing off. I did not stay to make sure, but returned to Van Helsing. He rubbed the brandy, as on another occasion, on her lips and gums, and on her wrists and the palms of her hands. He said to me, "I can do this. All that can be at the present. You go wake those maids. Flick them in the face with a wet towel, and flick them hard. Make them get heat and fire and a warm bath. This poor soul is nearly as cold as that beside her. She will need to be heated before we can do anything more." I went at once and found little difficulty in waking the 3 of the women. The 4th was only a young girl, and the drug had evidently affected her more strongly, so I lifted her on the sofa and let her sleep. The others were dazed at first, but as remembrance came back to them, they cried and sobbed in a hysterical manner. I was stern with them, however, and would not let them talk. I told them that 1 life was bad enough to lose, and if that they delayed, they would sacrifice Miss Lucy. So, sobbing and crying, they went about their way, half clad as they were, and prepared fire and water. Fortunately, the kitchen and boiler fires were still alive, and there was no lack of hot water. We got a bath and carried Lucy out as she was, and placed her in it. Whilst we were busy chafing her limbs, there was a knock at the hall door. One of the maids ran off, hurried on some more clothes, and opened it. Then she returned and whispered to us that there was a gentleman who had come with a message from Mr. Holmwood. I bade her simply tell him that he must wait, for we could see no one now. She went away with the message, and, engrossed with our work, I clean forgot about him. I never saw in all my experience the professor work in such deadly earnest. I knew, as he knew, that it was a stand-up fight with death, and in a pause told him so. He answered me in a way that I did not understand, but with the sternest look that his face could wear. "If that were all, I would stop here where we are now, and let her fade away into peace. For I see no light in life over her horizon." He went on with his work with, if possible, renewed and more frenzied vigour. Presently we both began to be conscious that the heat was beginning to be of some effect. Lucy's heart beat a trifle more audibly to the stethoscope, and her lungs had a perceptible movement. Van Helsing's face almost beamed, as we lifted her from the bath and rolled her in a hot sheet to dry her, he said to me, the first gain is ours. Check to the king. We took Lucy into another room, which had by now been prepared, and laid her in bed and forced a few drops of brandy down her throat. I noticed that Van Helsing tied a soft silk handkerchief round her throat. She was still unconscious, and was quite as bad as, if not worse than, we had ever seen her. Van Helsing called in one of the women and told her to stay with her and not take her eyes off her until we returned, and then beckoned me out of the room. "We must consult as to what is to be done," he said as we descended the stairs. In the hall, he opened the dining room door and we passed in, he closing the door carefully behind him. The shutters had been opened, but the blinds were already down, with that obedience to the etiquette of death which the British woman of the lower classes always rigidly observes. The room was therefore dimly dark. There was, however, light enough for our purposes. Van Helsing's sternness was somewhat relieved by a look of perplexity. He was evidently torturing his mind about something, so I waited for an instant, and he spoke. "What are we to do? Where are we to turn for help? We must have another transfusion of blood, and that soon, or that poor girl's life won't be worth an hour's purchase. You are exhausted already. I am exhausted too. I fear to trust those women if they would have courage to submit. What are we to do for someone who will open his veins for her?" "What's the matter with me, anyhow?" "One who will open his veins for her." "What's the matter with me, anyhow?" The voice came from the sofa across the room, and its tones brought relief and joy to my heart, for they were those of Quincey Morris. Van Helsing started angrily at the first sound, but his face softened, and a glad look came into his eyes as I cried out, "Quincey Morris!" and rushed towards him with outstretched hands. "What brought you here?" I cried as our hands met. "I guess art is the cause." He handed me a telegram. "Have not heard from Seward for 3 days, and am terribly anxious. Cannot leave. Father still in same condition. Send me word how Lucy is. Do not delay. Homewood." I think I came just in the nick of time. You know you only have to tell me what to do. Van Helsing strode forward and took his hand, looking him straight in the eyes as he said, "A brave man's blood is the best thing on earth when a woman is in trouble. You're a man, and no mistake. Well, the devil may work against us for all he's worth, but God sends us men when we want them." Once again we went through the ghastly operation. I have not the heart to go through with the details. Lucy had got a terrible shock, and it told on her more than before, for though plenty of blood went into her veins, her body did not respond to the treatment as well as on the other occasions. Her struggle back into life was something frightful to see and hear. However, the action of both heart and lungs improved, and Van Helsing made a subcutaneous injection of morphia, as before, and with good effect. Her faint became a profound slumber. The professor watched whilst I went downstairs with Quincey Morris and set one of the maids to pay off one of the cabmen who were waiting. I left Quincey lying down after having a glass of wine, and told the cook to get ready a good breakfast. Then a thought struck me, and I went back to the room where Lucy was now. When I came in softly, I found Van Helsing with a sheet or two of notepaper in his hand. He'd evidently read it, and was thinking it over as he sat with his hand to his brow. There was a look of grim satisfaction in his face, as of one who has had a doubt solved. He handed me the paper, saying only, "It dropped from Lucy's breast when we carried her to the bath." When I read it, I stood looking at the professor, and after a pause asked him, "What in God's name, what does it all mean? Was she or is she mad? Or what sort of terrible danger is it?" I was so bewildered that I did not know what to say more. Van Helsing put out his hand and took the paper, saying, "Do not trouble about it now. Forget it for the present. You shall know and understand it all in good time. But it will be later. Now, what is it you came to me to say?" This brought me back to fact, and I was all myself again. I came to speak about the certificate of death. If we do not act properly and wisely, there may be an inquest, and that paper would have to be produced. I am in hopes that we need have no inquest, for if we had, it would surely kill poor Lucy, if nothing else would. You know, and I know, and any other doctor who attended her knows, that Mrs. Westenra had disease of the heart, and we can certify that she died of it. Let us fill up that certificate at once, and I shall take it myself to the registrar, and go to the undertaker. Oh, my good friend John, well thought of. Truly, Miss Lucy, if she be sad in the foes that beset her, is at least happy in the friends that love her. 1, 2, 3, all opened their veins for her, besides one old man. Ah, yes, I know, friend John, I am not blind. I love you all the more for it. Now go. In the hall I met Quincy Morris, with a telegram for Arthur telling him that Mrs. Westenra was dead, that Lucy also had been ill, but was now getting on better, and that Van Helsing and I were with her. I told him where I was going, and he hurried me out, but as I was going, said, "When you come back, Jack, may I have 2 words with you, old dwarf's elves?" I nodded in reply and went out. I found no difficulty about the registration, and arranged with the local undertaker to come up in the evening to measure for the coffin and to make arrangements. When I got back, Quincy was waiting for me. I told him I would see him as soon as I knew about Lucy, and went up to her room. She was still sleeping, and the professor seemingly had not moved from his seat at her side. From his putting his finger to his lips, I gathered that he expected her to wake before long, and was afraid of forestalling nature. So I went back down to Quincy and took him into the breakfast room, where the blinds were not drawn down, and which was a little more cheerful, or rather cheerless, than the other rooms. When we were alone, he said to me, "Jack Seward, I don't want to shove myself anywhere where I've no right to be, but this is no ordinary case. You know I love that girl and wanted to marry her. But although that's all past and gone, I can't help feel anxious about her all the time. What is it that's wrong with her? The Dutchman, and a fine fellow he is, I can see that, said that the time you 2 came into the room that you must have another transfusion of blood, and that you both and he were exhausted. Now I know well you medical men speak in camera, and that a man must not expect to know what they consult about in private. But this is no common matter, and whatever it is, I've done my part. Is that not so?" "That's so," I said, and he went on, "I take it that both you and Van Helsing have done already what I did today. Is that not so?" "That's so." "And I guess Art was in it too. When I saw him 4 days ago down at his own place, he looked queer. I've not seen anything pulled down so quick since I was on the pampas and had a mare that I was fond of to go to grass all in a night. One of those big bats that they call vampires that got at her in the night, and what with his gorge and the vein left open, there wasn't enough blood in her to let her stand up. I had to put a bullet through her as she lay. Jack, if you may tell me without betraying confidence, Arthur was the first. Is that not so?" As he spoke, the poor fellow looked terribly anxious. He was in a torture of suspense regarding the woman he loved, and his utter ignorance of the terrible mystery which seemed to surround her intensified his pain. His very heart was bleeding, and it took all the manhood out of him. And there was a royal lot of it, too, to keep him from breaking down. I paused before answering, for I felt that I must not betray anything which the professor wished to keep secret. But already he knew so much and guessed so much that there could be no reason for not answering. So I answered in the same phrase. "That's so." "And how long has this been going on?" "About 10 days. 10 days? Then I guess, Jack Seward, that poor pretty creature that we all love has had put into her veins within that time the blood of 4 strong men. Man alive, her whole body couldn't hold it." Then, coming close to me, he spoke in a fierce half-whisper. "What took it out?" I shook my head. That, I said, is the crux. Van Helsing is simply frantic about it, and I'm at my wit's end. I can't even hazard a guess. There's been a series of little circumstances which have thrown out all our calculations as to Lucy being properly watched, but these shall not occur again. Here we stay until all be well, or ill. Quincy held out his hand. Count me in, he said. You and that Dutchman will tell me what to do, and I'll do it. When she woke late in the afternoon, Lucy's first movement was to feel in her breast, and to my surprise, produce the paper which Van Helsing had given to me to read. The careful professor had replaced it where it had come from, lest on waking she should be alarmed. Her eye then lit on Van Helsing and on me too, and gladdened. Then she looked around the room, and seeing where she was, shuddered. She gave a loud cry and put her poor thin hands before her pale face. We both understood what that meant, that she had realized to the full her mother's death. So we tried what we could do to comfort her. Doubtless sympathy eased her somewhat, but she was very low in thought and spirit, and wept silently and weakly for a long time. We told her that either or both of us would now remain with her all the time, and that seemed to comfort her. Towards dusk she fell into a doze. Here a very odd thing happened. Van Helsing, whilst still asleep, she took the paper from her breast and tore it in two. Van Helsing stepped over and took the pieces from her. All the same, she went on with the action of tearing, as though the material was still in her hands. Finally, she lifted her hands and opened them as though scattering the fragments. Van Helsing seemed surprised, and his brows gathered as if in thought, but he said nothing. 19th of September. All last night she slept fitfully, being always afraid to sleep, and something weaker when she woke from it. The professor and I took it in turns to watch, and we never left her for a moment unattended. Quincy Morris said nothing about his intention, but I knew that all night long he patrolled round and round the house. When the day came, its searching light showed the ravages in poor Lucy's strength. She was hardly able to turn her head, and the little nourishment which she could take seemed to do her no good. At times she slept, and both Van Helsing and I noticed the difference in her between sleeping and waking. Whilst asleep she looked stronger, although more haggard, and her breathing was softer. Her open mouth showed the pale gums drawn back from the teeth, which thus looked positively longer and sharper than usual. When she woke, the softness of her eyes evidently changed the expression, for then she looked her own self, though a dying one. In the afternoon she asked for Arthur, and we telegraphed for him. Quincy went off to meet him at the station. When he arrived, it was nearly 6 o'clock, and the sun was setting full and warm, and the light streamed in through the window and gave more colour to the pale cheeks. When he saw her, Arthur was simply choking with emotion, and none of us could speak. In the hours that had passed, the fits of sleep, or the comatose condition that passed for it, had grown more frequent, so that the pauses when conversation was possible were shortened. Arthur's presence, however, seemed to act as a stimulant. She rallied a little and spoke to him more brightly than she had done since we arrived. He, too, pulled himself together and spoke as cheerfully as he could, so that the best was made of everything. It was now nearly 1 o'clock, and he and Van Helsing are sitting with her. I am to relieve them in a quarter of an hour, and am entering this on Lucy's phonograph. Until 6 o'clock they are to try to rest. I fear that tomorrow will end our watching, for the shock has been too great. The poor child cannot rally. God help us all. Letter, Mina Harker, to Lucy Westenra. Unopened by her. 17th September. My dearest Lucy, it seems an age since I'd heard from you, or indeed since I wrote. You will pardon me, I know, for all my faults when you've read all my budget of news. Well, I got my husband back all right. When we arrived at Exeter, there was a carriage waiting for us, and in it, though he had an attack of gout, Mr. Hawkins. He took us to his house, where there were rooms for us all, nice and comfortable, and we dined together. After dinner, Mr. Hawkins said, "My dears, I want to drink to your health and prosperity, and may every blessing attend you both. I know you both from children, and have, with love and pride, seen you grow up. Now I want you to make your home here with me. I have left to me neither chick nor child, all are gone. And in my will, I have left you everything." I cried, Lucy dear, as Jonathan and the old man clasped hands. Our evening was a very, very happy one. So here we are, installed in this beautiful old house, and from both my bedroom and the drawing-room I can see the great elms of the cathedral close, with their great black stems standing out from the old yellow stone of the cathedral, and I can hear the rooks overhead cawing, and chattering and gossiping all the day, after the manner of rooks and humans. I am busy, I need not tell you, arranging things and housekeeping. Jonathan and Mr. Hawkins are busy all day, for now that Jonathan is a partner, Mr. Hawkins wants to tell him all about the clients. "How is your dear mother getting on? I wish I could run up to town for a day or two to see you, dear, but I dare not go yet, with so much on my shoulders, and Jonathan wants looking after still. He's beginning to put some flesh on his bones again, but was terribly weakened by the long illness. Even now he sometimes starts out of his sleep in a sudden way, and awakes all trembling until I can coax him back to his usual placidity. However, thank God, these occasions grow less frequent as the days go on, and they will in time pass away altogether. I trust. And I have told you my news, let me ask yours. When are you to be married, and where, and who is to perform the ceremony, and what are you to wear, and is it to be a public or a private wedding? Tell me all about it, dear, tell me everything, for there is nothing which interests you which will not be dear to me. Jonathan asked me to send his respectful duty, but I do not think that is good enough from the junior partner of the important firm of Hawkins and Harker, and so as you love me and he loves me, and I love you with all the moods and tenses of the verb, I send you simply his love instead. Goodbye, my dearest Lucy, and all blessings on you. Yours, Mina Harker. Report from Patrick Hennessy, MD, MRSC, LKQCPI, etc. The friggin' alphabet. Etc. to John Seward, MD. 20th of September. My dear sir, in accordance with your wishes, I enclose report of the conditions of everything left in my charge. With regard to patient Renfield, there is more to say. He has had another outbreak which might have had a dreadful ending, but which, as it fortunately happened, was unattended with any unhappy results. This afternoon the carrier's cart with 2 men made a call at the empty house whose grounds abut on ours, the house to which you will remember the patient twice ran away. The men stopped at our gate to ask the porter their way, as they were strangers. I myself was looking out the study window having a smoke after dinner, and saw one of them come up to the house. As he passed the window of Renfield's room, the patient began to rate him from within, and called him all the foul names he could lay his tongue to. The man, who seemed a decent enough fellow, contented himself by telling him to shut up for a foul-mouthed beggar, whereupon our man accused him of robbing him and wanting to murder him, and said that he would hinder him if he was so to swing for it. I opened the window and signed to the man not to notice, so he contented himself after looking the place over and making up his mind as to what kind of a place he had got to by saying, "Law bless you, sir, I wouldn't mind what was said to me in a bloomin' madhouse. I pity the governor for not having to live in the house with a wild beast like that." Then he asked his way civilly enough, and I told him where the gate of the empty house was. He went away, followed by threats and curses and revilings from our man. I went down to see if I could make out any cause for his anger, since he is usually such a well-behaved man. Except his violent fits, nothing of the kind had ever occurred. I found him, to my astonishment, quite composed and most genial in his manner. I tried to get him to talk of the incident, but he blandly asked me questions as to what I meant, and led me to believe that he was completely oblivious of the affair. It was, I'm sorry to say, however, only another instance of his cunning, Within a half an hour I heard of him again. This time he'd broken out through the window of his room and was running down the avenue. I called to the attendants to follow me and ran after him, for I feared he was intent on some mischief. My fear was justified when I saw the same cart which had passed before coming down the road, having on it some great wooden boxes. The men were wiping their foreheads and were flushed in the face as if with violent exercise. Before I could get up to him, the patient rushed at them, and pulling one of them off the cart, began to knock his head against the ground. If I had not seized him just at the moment, I believe he would have killed the man then and there. The other fellow jumped down and struck him over the head with the butt end of his heavy whip. It was a terrible blow, but he didn't seem to mind it, but seized him also, and struggled with the three of us, pulling us to and fro as if we were kittens. You know, I'm no lightweight, and the others were both burly men. At first he was silent in his fighting, but as we began to master him, and the attendants were putting a strait waistcoat on him, he began to shout, "I'll frustrate them! They shan't rob me! They shan't murder me by inches! I'll fight for my lord and master!" and all sorts of similar incoherent ravings. It was with very considerable difficulty that they got him back to the house and put him in the padded room. One of the attendants, Hardy, had a finger broken. However, I set it all right, and he is going on well. The two carriers were at first loud in their threats of actions for damages, and promised to rain all the penalties of the law on us. Their threats were, however, mingled with some sort of indirect apology for the defeat of the two of them by a feeble madman. They said that if it had not been for the way their strength had been spent in carrying and raising the heavy boxes to the cart, that they would have made short work of him. They gave us another reason for their defeat, the extraordinary state of drought to which they had been reduced by the dusty nature of their occupation, and the reprehensible distance from the scene of their labours of any place of public entertainment. I quite understood their drift, and after a glass of grog, or rather more of the same, and with each a sovereign in hand, they made light of the attack, and swore they would encounter a worse madman any day for the pleasure of meeting so bloomin' good a bloke as your correspondent. I took their names and addresses in case they might be needed. They are as follows: Jack Smollett of Dudding's Rents, King George's Road, Great Walworth, and Thomas Snelling, Peter Farley's Row, Guide Court, Bethnal Green. They are both in the employment of Harris & Sons Moving and Shipment Company, Orange Masters Yard, Soho. I shall report to you any matter of interest occurring here, and shall wire you at once if there is anything of importance. Believe me, dear sir, yours faithfully, Patrick Hennessy. Boy, this is a long one, isn't it? Letter, Mina Harker to Lucy Westenra, unopened by her. 18th September. My dearest Lucy, such a sad blow has befallen us. Mr. Hawkins has died very suddenly. Some may not think it so sad for us, but we had both come to so love him that it really made as though we had lost a father. I never knew either mother or father, so that the dear old man's death is a real blow to me. Jonathan is greatly distressed. It is not only he feels sorrow, deep sorrow, for the good dear man who has befriended him all his life, and now, at the end, has treated him like his own son, and left him a fortune, to which people of our modest bringing up is wealth beyond the dream of avarice. But Jonathan feels it on another account. He says the amount of responsibility which it puts upon him makes him nervous. He begins to doubt himself. I try to cheer him up, and my belief in him helps him to have a belief in himself. But it is here that the grave shock he experienced tells upon him the most. Oh, it is too hard that a sweet, simple, noble, strong nature as his, a nature which enabled him by our good friend's aid to rise from clerk to master in a few years, should be so injured that the very essence of its strength is gone. Forgive me, my dear, if I worry you with my troubles in the midst of your own happiness. But, Lucy, dear, I must tell someone, for the strain of keeping up a brave and cheerful appearance to Jonathan tries me, and I have no one here that I can confide in. I dread coming up to London, as we must do the day after tomorrow, for poor Mr. Hawkins left in his will that he was to be buried in the grave with his father. As there are no relations at all, Jonathan will have to be chief mourner. I shall try to run over to see you, dearest, if only for a few minutes. Forgive me for troubling you. With all blessings, your loving Mina Harker. Dr. Seward's Diary. 20th of September. Only resolution and habit can let me make an entry tonight. I'm too miserable, too low-spirited, too sick of the world and all in it, including life itself, that I would not care if I heard this moment the flapping of the wings of the angel of death. And he has been flapping those grim wings to some purpose of late. Lucy's mother, Arthur's father, and now let me get on with my work. I duly relieved Van Helsing in his watch over Lucy. We wanted Arthur to go to rest also, but he refused at first. It was only when I told him that we should want him to help us during the day, and that we must not all break down for want of rest, lest Lucy should suffer, that he agreed to go. Van Helsing was very kind to him. "Come, my child," he said. "Come with me. You are sick and weak, and have had much sorrow and much mental pain, as well as that tax on your strength that we know of. You must not be alone, for to be alone is to be full of fears and alarms. Come to the drawing room. There is a big fire, there are 2 sofas. You shall lie on one, and I on the other, and our sympathy will be comfort to each other, even though we do not speak, and even if we sleep." Arthur went off with him, casting back a longing look on Lucy's face, which lay in her pillow, almost whiter than the lawn. She lay quite still, and I looked round the room to see that all was as it should be. I could see that the professor had carried out in this room, as in the other, his purpose of using the garlic. The whole of the window sashes reeked with it, and round Lucy's neck, over the silk handkerchief which Van Helsing made her keep on, was a rough chaplet of the same odorous flowers. Lucy was breathing somewhat stertorously, and her face was at its worst, for the open mouth showed the pale gums. Her teeth, in the dim, uncertain light, seemed longer and sharper than they had been in the morning. In particular, by some trick of the light, the canine teeth looked longer and sharper than the rest. I sat down by her, and presently she moved uneasily. At the same time there came a sort of dull flapping or buffeting at the window. I went over to it softly, and peeped out by the corner of the blind. There was a full moonlight, and I could see that the noise was made by a great bat, which wheeled round, doubtless attracted by the light, although dim, and every now and again struck the window with its wings. When I came back to my seat, I found that Lucy had moved slightly, and had torn away the garlic flowers from her throat. I replaced them as well as I could, and sat watching her. Presently she woke, and I gave her food, as Van Helsing had prescribed. She took but a little, and that languidly. There did not seem to be with her now the unconscious struggle for life and strength that had hitherto so marked her illness. It struck me as curious that the moment she became conscious, she pressed the garlic flowers close to her. It was certainly odd that whenever she got into that lethargic state, with the stertorous breathing, that she put the flowers from her, but that when she waked, she clutched them close. There was no possibility of making any mistake about this, for in the long hours that followed, she had many spells of sleeping and waking, and repeated both actions many times. At 6 o'clock, Van Helsing came to relieve me. Arthur had then fallen into a doze, and he mercifully let him sleep on. When he saw Lucy's face, I could hear the hissing indraw of his breath, and he said to me in a sharp whisper, "Draw up the blind. I want light." Then he bent down, and with his face almost touching Lucy's, examined her carefully. He removed the flowers and lifted the silk handkerchief from her throat. As he did so, he started back, and I could hear his ejaculation, "My God," as it was smothered in his throat. I bent over and looked too, and as I noticed, some queer chill came over me. The wounds on her throat had absolutely disappeared. For fully 5 minutes Van Helsing stood looking at her, with his face at its sternest. Then he turned to me and said calmly, "She is dying. It will not be long now. It will be much different, mark me, whether she dies conscious or in her sleep. Wake that poor boy and let him come see the last. He trusts us, and we have promised him." I went to the dining room and waked him. He was dazed for a moment, but when he saw the sunlight streaming in through the edges of the shutters, he thought he was late and expressed his fear. I assured him that Lucy was still asleep, but told him as gently as I could that both Van Helsing and I feared that the end was near. He covered his face with his hands and slid on his knees by the sofa, where he remained, perhaps a minute, with his head buried, praying, while his shoulders shook with grief. I took him by the hand and raised him up. "Come," I said. "My dear old fellow, summon all your fortitude. It will be your best and easiest for her." When we came into Lucy's room, I could see that Van Helsing had, with usual forethought, been putting matters straight and making everything look as pleasing as possible. He'd even brushed Lucy's hair so that it lay on the pillow in its usual sunny ripples. When we came into the room, she opened her eyes and, seeing him, whispered softly, "Arthur! Oh, my love, I am so glad you've come." He was stooping to kiss her when Van Helsing motioned him back. "No," he whispered. "Not yet. Hold her hand. It will comfort her more." So Arthur took her hand and knelt beside her, and she looked her best, with all the soft lines matching the angelic beauty of her eyes. Then gradually her eyes closed and she sank to sleep. For a little bit her breast heaved softly, and her breath came and went like a tired child's. And then insensibly there came the strange change which I had noticed in the night. Her breathing grew stertorous, the mouth opened, and the pale gums, drawn back, made the teeth look longer and sharper than ever. In a sort of sleep-waking, vague, unconscious way, she opened her eyes, which were now dull and hard at once, and said in a soft, voluptuous voice, as which I'd never heard come from her lips, "Arthur! Oh, my love, I am so glad you've come. Kiss me." Arthur bent eagerly over to kiss her, but at that instant Van Helsing, who like me had been startled by her voice, swooped upon him and, catching him by the neck with both hands, dragged him back with a fury of strength which I'd never thought he could have possessed, and actually hurled him across the room. "Not for your life," he said. "Not for your living soul and hers." And he stood between them like a lion at bay. Arthur was so taken aback that he did not for a moment know what to do or say. Before any impulse of violence could seize him, he realized the place and the occasion, and stood silent, waiting. I kept my eyes fixed on Lucy, as did Van Helsing, and we saw a spasm as of rage flit like a shadow over her face. The sharp teeth champed together. Then her eyes closed and she breathed heavily. Very shortly after, she opened her eyes in all of their softness, and putting out her poor, pale, thin hand, took Van Helsing's great brown one. Drawing it to her, she kissed it. "Oh, true friend," she said in a faint voice, with untellable pathos. "My true friend, and his. Oh, guard him and give me peace." "I swear it," he said solemnly, kneeling beside her and holding up his hand as one who registers an oath. Then he turned to Arthur and said to him, "Come, my child. Take her hand in yours and kiss her on the forehead, and only this once." Their eyes met instead of their lips, and so they parted. Lucy's eyes closed, and Van Helsing, who'd been watching closely, took Arthur's arm and drew him away. And then Lucy's breathing became stertorous again, and all at once it ceased. "It is all over," said Van Helsing. "She is dead." I took Arthur by the arm and led him away to the drawing-room, where he sat down and covered his face with his hands, sobbing in a way that nearly broke me down to see. I went back to the room and found Van Helsing looking at poor Lucy, and his face was sterner than ever. Some change had come over her body. Death had given back part of her beauty, For her brow and cheeks had recovered some of their flowing lines. Even the lips had lost their deadly pallor. It was as if the blood, no longer needed for the working of the heart, had gone to make the harshness of death as little rude as might be. We thought her dying while she slept, and sleeping when she died. I stood beside Van Helsing and said, well, poor girl, there is peace for her at last. It is the end. He turned to me and said with grave solemnity, Not so. Alas, not so. It is only the beginning. When I asked him what he meant, he only shook his head and answered, We can do nothing as yet. Wait and see.
What a chapter.
Wow. That was a long one. Oh my gosh.
That was a pretty long
A
one.
lot of things happened. Oy, oy, oy.
So much foreshadowing, though, in that. I was getting it like every 5 seconds.
It was just kind of like boom, 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 boom.
Death flapping like great wings.
Yeah.
Then the story with the cow and the vampire bats.
Yep.
Kind of on the nose with that one.
Well,
but
it's like Quincy Morris is like, he knows, but he doesn't know. But he's like, this is like what happened with my mare. Like, what is happening?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Melanie brought up something. What literary significance is in the idea that all 3 of Lucy's suitors gave her blood?
What do you think?
I don't know.
Okay.
I was getting all like the bat references and the foreshadowing. I didn't really think about it, but I would say, I mean, I think it kind of shows how like deep their love is. You're giving your lifeblood literally to this woman.
So I think
And I think it like shows kind of the extreme of evil, I guess. You know, giving your blood is like one of the most virtuous things you can do.
yeah, there's
but
definitely
still
the idea
it's
of
not
chivalry.
enough. Yeah.
So I think so when this book came out, it was like very like naughty. People thought it was naughty.
Oh, because she said kiss me voluptuously.
Well, that and like she says to Mina that like she wants to marry all 3 of these guys.
Oh yeah.
And I think there is significance in all 3 of these guys are now tied to her through giving the blood.
Mm-hmm.
They are also, I mean, this isn't to be crass, but they are all giving her life-giving body fluids. So there is the kind of undertone of promiscuity, multiple sexual partners.
Yeah.
Polygamy in that she wanted to marry all of them. Now they are all kind of like bound to her in a way.
Yeah, that's true.
That's the connection
I mean, in that
made.
case, like Dracula's out here getting sloppy seconds. They're giving her the blood, and then he's drinking the blood. Like he's in this too.
Yeah, well, I think, and that's like why this book was so like controversial at the time, because of like the sexual connotations of everything.
Yeah.
There's a dude creeping into this girl's room at night, sucking out her
Dracula's like
blood.
a bat pimp.
But I would guess that's the literary significance is You've got it doesn't matter how big and strong you are, the act of chivalry isn't always enough. I think there's the metaphor for sexual intercourse. I think there's the metaphor for polygamous marriage that Lucy wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Those are my thoughts. Melanie, do you have thoughts?
And poor Mina, writing all these letters without a clue in the world.
Oh my god, I know. Mina just like the Mina letters are just like, meanwhile, back at the ranch.
Meanwhile, things are going great. We're rich now.
Yeah, like we got a house and more money. Jonathan now owns the business completely. We're really sad that he died,
But money.
but our social standing is now. But
Jonathan's still got a little PTSD, even though at this point in history we don't even know what that is.
But
he just needs to man up.
But he needs to suck it up and eat more mashed potatoes because he's still too skinny. But yeah, I don't know. I always look at the blood transfusion thing as sexual.
Okay. Well, next time I give blood, I'm just gonna feel dirty.
Well,
My
I
God.
mean, the literary analysis that I've also read agrees with me.
Just go to a blood drive. Ugh, how could you? You know how many people are gonna have your blood now?
So Melanie said she thinks the blood hints of intimacy and sexuality. It also might relate to the blood of Christ as being life-giving, coming from people who she loves and who love her. I think that's also a good interpretation.
Ooh, that is a good one.
I think that's a good one. You could definitely argue that. You could even say, if you're going with like the Christ interpretation, Melanie, you could even say that her body is like a literal battleground of good versus evil.
Yeah.
With the good guys trying to save her and Dracula continuing to, it's like they're playing tug of war with her. And it's like,
But the good guys trying to save her, Dracula trying to kill her, and Mom sabotaging her.
Yeah. Whoops. I wonder, are they bonded to Dracula because he drank their blood, do you think? I don't think so, because Dracula didn't directly drink their blood from their bodies. And it was like a one-time thing.
I'm sorry.
Now you're just thinking about it.
I'm thinking
you just thought one night
sexual
stand.
way, yeah.
And if you think about
it's not promiscuous if it's sloppy seconds.
Well, and if you think about it from the sexual angle or the romantic angle, you could then also argue, I know that it's been said before that people thought Bram Stoker was gay. And then there are instances in the book where...
Is that why, like, there's always this kind of, like... I wouldn't say there always is, but I feel like more often than not, there's, like, this homosexuality related with vampires in a lot of things.
It's there. Yeah, it's there. I think... So they theorize that Bram Stoker could have been like closeted gay, and I think if you read those first few chapters of Dracula, you could definitely like get the gay vibes from Dracula to Jonathan.
Maybe that's why Jonathan's alive. He liked him.
Huh?
Maybe that's why Jonathan's alive. He likes him.
It could be. I don't know. Lucy's body. I could relate that to Harry and Tom battling over Ginny in the Chamber of Secrets. I could see that. I wonder if Rowling was somewhat influenced by Dracula in writing Chamber of Secrets. I could see it. I could definitely see it, Melanie. And I think if you keep that whole idea of the Chamber of Secrets in mind, when we get to like the next section of the book, I think there's more of that in there that you could then connect to Ginny and Tom in the Chamber of Secrets. I
I
won't
think
say anything else, but I do think there's further evidence that you could definitely say she was influenced more by Dracula with the next couple chapters.
I'll even give you another one, how Dracula may have influenced like Voldemort. Dracula has to take a life by drinking the blood to extend his life. Voldemort needs to kill someone in order to create the Horcrux and extend his life.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, there's that. You could definitely make that connection. That whole
Also, he's very pale and has red eyes.
Yes, very pale and has red eyes. He has more hair, but yes.
Dracula also has a nose.
Dracula does have a nose. Dracula's also like not only has hair, but he's like very hairy.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think that there's definitely some Dracula.
Hairy palms.
Hairy palms. God, why? So unsettling. Vampires do exist in the HP universe. We meet one at the Slug Club Christmas party.
Yeah.
Sanguini. And even there, like in Harry Potter, Sanguini is like looking at like the young, cute teenage girls at the party and is like looking at them hungrily or something, rolling rights. And the author guy who like brought him to the party has to be like, nope, don't go over there. So even Rowling,
times have changed.
So even Rowling, in putting a single vampire in the novel for 5 seconds, is already in like a paragraph describes him as sanguine, as like a predator of women, a sexual woman predator, and it's like in 2
Well,
sentences.
it makes sense referring back to Dracula. I mean,
Yeah.
Lucy's a young woman, so I mean that's perfect reference.
Yeah. But I definitely think you could read Dracula influences into the development of Voldemort, into Tom and Ginny's relationship in Chamber of Secrets. Spoilers, have you ever seen Dracula 2000? In that movie, Dracula is revealed to be Judas. I have not seen Dracula 2000. That's an interesting take, that he's Judas. Never heard that. Nope. Okay.
That's interesting.
That is interesting.
That just makes me think of like What We Do in the Shadows, or just like a comedy vampire thing where he ends up being like the bad guy in every situation, you know? He was the one who stabbed Julius Caesar, who put it all together.
Oh, Brutus and Brutus doesn't put it together. He helps.
Yeah.
Cassius. Right? Is it Cassius?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was the one he was John Wilkes Booth and all this other stuff.
I've got the theme song stuck in my head right now. You're dead, you're dead, you're dead. And out of this world. All right. I mean, we're not going to hang out for too much longer anyway, I don't think. But
yeah, it's 10:30.
It's 10:30. So we're probably going to head out in a few minutes too. So
I did want to check out this article.
Yeah, let's look at this thing real quick. The blood type discussion, as far as how did Lucy not die from all the blood transfusions. Okay, so the book was published prior to the development of ABO cross-matching. This is cool. It was one of the first novels to feature a case of blood transfusion as like a major feature of the story.
Put it up there
There we go.
so you can see.
This is just the abstract.
Here you
But
can
here, I'll kind of
scroll through.
Y'all want to read this, or do you want me to read it?
Wait, me?
Yeah. Do you want me to read this? Or?
Oh, yeah. Why not?
Okay.
Unless you want me to read it.
No. Bram Stoker's novel Dracula was one of the first works of popular, fiction to feature a case of blood transfusion. The book was published prior to the development of ABO cross-matching, so the recipient of the transfusion was fortunate to avoid a hemolytic transfusion reaction. Analyzing this case from a modern perspective allows one to review the history of transfusion medicine, the science of ABO incompatibility, and basic principles of probability. Bayesian reasoning can be used to conclude that Dracula's victim likely had type A blood. Stoker's novel Dracula is well known for spawning a wildly successful genre of vampire literature, but it also offers a glimpse into the history of transfusion medicine as one of the first works of popular fiction to feature a case of blood transfusion. Stoker may have learned about the procedure from one of his brothers, 3 of whom were physicians, including one who eventually became president of the Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland. Here we present an analysis of this fictional case of blood transfusion from Dracula as a way of reviewing basic principles of transfusion medicine and probability. Let us begin with a case description. The patient is a previously healthy young woman named Lucy who is attacked at night by the Transylvanian vampire Count Dracula. Lucy quickly becomes severely anemic, and her worrisome appearance prompts a friend to summon Abraham Van Helsing, a man said to know as much about obscure diseases as anyone in the world. The doctor recognizes Lucy's vampire-induced anemia and declares she will die from sheer want of blood. He arranges for her to have 4 blood transfusions, each from an unrelated donor. She tolerates all 4 transfusions without any side effects, regaining some vitality. Unfortunately, Dracula returns, and Lucy eventually succumbs to the vampire and joins the ranks of the undead.
Spoilers!
Whoops.
She's not actually dead.
Reading the story from a modern perspective, one notices that Stoker makes no mention of cross-matching the donated blood. This apparent omission reflects the state of medical knowledge at the time. When Dracula was published in 1897, no one had started cross-matching donors and recipients. Blood transfusion was a risky undertaking, and life-threatening reactions were common and poorly understood.
Oh, so at this time, it was basically like, well, it might work.
It
They
might kill you.
It must be the devil that caused this anemia. And
James Blundell, an English obstetrician who performed many of the first human-to-human transfusions starting in the first half of the 19th century, noted that many of his patients suffered fever, headache, backache, and passed dark urine after receiving donated blood. Some of the patients died, and Blundell did not have an explanation.
it was the devil.
After 1900,
They didn't pray enough.
3 years after the publication of Dracula, the puzzle was solved by Austrian physician Karl Landsteiner, who realized that there are 4 ABO blood types and that not all blood types are compatible. It is now known that one's blood type is determined by a single gene. This gene is called ABO and encodes an enzyme that adds a sugar molecule to a carbohydrate chain on red blood cells. The gene has 3 alleles. The A and B alleles encode enzyme variants that add different sugars, and the O allele is the A allele with a frameshift mutation, rendering the protein non-functional. At a very early age, people develop IgM antibodies to A or B antigens not found in their own red blood cells because these antigens resemble polysaccharides from gastrointestinal bacteria. These naturally occurring antibodies cause red blood cells with foreign ABO antigens to agglutinate, resulting in hemolytic transfusion reactions, such as those described by Blundell. Let us now return to Dracula. Lucy received 4 units of blood without cross-matching from 4 unrelated donors. For the sake of this analysis, let us assume that any incompatible blood would have caused a reaction. This assumption is likely safe given Lucy's young age, but it is worth noting that there are some patients with low antibody titers who can receive incompatible transfusions without symptoms. Lucy's risk of having a hemolytic transfusion reaction can be calculated based on the distribution of the 4 blood types in the European population. In this group, 44% of people are type O, 43% are A, 9% are B, and 4% are AB. We assume that Lucy has a certain blood type. Her probability of finding 4 compatible donors is simply the probability of finding 1 compatible donor for that blood type raised to the 4th power. Taking the weighted average of these 4 values, weighted by the initial probability of each blood type, gives the overall probability that all 4 transfusions are successful. Using this approach, one finds that the overall chance of a European such as Lucy tolerating 4 non-matched transfusions from European donors is only 31%. Lucy is fortunate to have avoided a hemolytic transfusion reaction. The fact that she does avoid a reaction allows us to make inferences about her blood type. This type of thinking is known as Bayesian reasoning. To understand the idea, consider someone who has tolerated 100 non-matched transfusions from random donors. Given this transfusion history, it is likely that the recipient has AB blood, the universal recipient. Applied to Lucy's case, Bayes' theorem can be used to generate 4 conditional probabilities, 1 for each possible blood type. Her chance of having type O blood, the most common blood type in the population, but also the least compatible on the receiving end of a transfusion, falls from 44 to 6%. The probability of her having AB blood rises only to 13% given the low prevalence of AB blood in the population. Her probability of having type A rises from 43 to 79%, and her chance of having type B falls from 9% to 2%. Thus, it is possible to conclude that Lucy, the first victim in Bram Stoker's Dracula, likely had type A blood. Working through this analysis provides an opportunity to review basic principles of transfusion medicine and Bayesian reasoning. The case has used successfully as a teaching tool for medical students and residents. It prompts one to remember the basics of ABO compatibility and to think about Bayes' theorem, which is the basis of all discussions pre- and post-test probability. Lucy tolerates all 4 transfusions, but giving her low pre-test probability of being a universal recipient, her post-test probability of having type A blood is still AB blood is still low. And as a final aside, the analysis might have implications for the genre of vampire literature as a whole. Some blood-sucking creatures, such as mosquitoes, are known to preferentially seek out certain blood types when it's time to feed. As it is reasonable to speculate vampires might exhibit preferential feeding behavior. If so, perhaps those with type A blood should watch out.
Oh, and there it is. I am curious now with the mosquito thing. Like, I kind of want to look that up. Because maybe it's that I just have that blood. That's why I don't get bit by mosquitoes, and you always get eaten by mosquitoes.
I'm going to see right now.
So type A blood, huh? 31% chance that Lucy would be fine. Although, I mean, she died, so was she really fine?
Well, because Dracula didn't stop sucking her blood. So I don't think
That's
it
true.
was the transfusions that were the problem. I think it was...
Nah.
I think it was there were other factors at play, for sure.
Imagine
Oh,
if science
sorry.
prevailed and she actually did die from the blood transfusions. Dracula would be so mad.
What's the matter? What?
I said, imagine if she did die from the blood transfusions, though. Dracula would be so mad. He just did all that work, try to transform her. They just went and killed her.
I mean, yeah, it's bummer.
Well, what blood type is it?
I guess it's O.
That they like?
Yeah.
Or, oh.
But they're
Are you...
least attracted to type A.
Oh, okay.
That makes no sense because I am type A.
I don't know what to tell you then.
But they're also attracted to body heat, certain colors, your body odor. Like the color of the clothes you're wearing.
Well, you definitely wear more colorful clothes.
They
I
like
wear like black, blue, and green.
They are attracted to certain colors like black and navy blue.
I don't know. I don't even know.
What is it? I don't know.
Maybe it's because I'm just too tempting for them that they're like, nah, it's a trap. Like this is too perfect. I don't know what type I am. I have no idea what type I am.
Okay.
What do you mean? How do you know?
I've had blood work done.
Yeah, I have too. I just never checked what type of blood type.
Driver's license?
Let me
It's
hold on.
my
I'm gonna go
driver's
check.
license. But maybe that's because I'm a donor. It's on my driver's license. So if vampires seem to prefer young-ish girls, then why are the majority of vampires not female? Assuming Harry Potter logic. Well, because vampires, I think, are written to be like the predatory seductor of the young girl. That they're not girls. I think that's why. And from a literary sense, they're like this dark, seductive, predatory, dangerous thing that's coming to get the young girls in the nighttime. And that's why they're all dudes.
I love how on your driver's license they shorten the eye color. So my eyes are just bro.
Just bro.
Bro.
Mine must say gree. Breh.
Yeah. Yeah, mine doesn't say.
He's trying to pick him up like he's a baby. Did you see that?
Yeah.
He's trying to scruff him.
I mean, I am a donor too, but I don't have my blood type on here. Carol, don't be showing my information to the screen.
No one can see it. Got that picture.
My 16-year-old self.
I can't. Look at you.
I feel like I really don't look that much different.
You don't, but you do at the same time. I don't know.
I definitely look a lot younger. But yeah, see, I don't have my blood type on here. So yeah.
Well, I don't know, I guess.
But my eyes are bro.
Yep, they look pretty bro to me.
Right.
Yep, Melanie, we got the same blood type and we get eaten alive, so I don't know. I don't know.
I want to go give blood now just so I can know my blood type.
They ask you. They ask you what it is when you go there.
Oh, I don't know.
All
right, I gotta go. I gotta go to the doctor and
you gotta
get
find
my blood
out.
type.
It's probably on your medical record somewhere.
Maybe.
You had blood work done before?
Pretty sure, yeah.
Yeah. Well, then they know what your blood type is. You just gotta find out.
Can't remember the last time I had it done, but yeah.
Doesn't change.
Well, I know, but I'm just saying I don't know.
I'm just gonna. Oh, I want to see how long the next chapter is. I'm just.
I mean, vampires are literally predators, so they hunt you down, suck the life from you.
So, next chapter is not that bad. It's kind of long, but after that, we're into like unknown territory because chapter 13 was the last one I recorded.
Oh yeah.
So then, yeah.
But oh, I remember what happens in the next chapter though.
Yep.
Good times.
Good times. Fun stuff. But yeah, I don't know. It's quarter of. I think it's about time we head to bed.
Yeah, I'm getting a little tired.
I'm a little tired. Both got to work tomorrow. But all things considered, if nothing happens between tonight and tomorrow evening, we will stream some more tomorrow.
Yep, same time.
Yep, about the same time, 8:30 tomorrow. More.
Well, we could probably do it a little bit earlier. We could probably do 8 tomorrow. I'll post it.
Yeah,
We'll figure it
yeah,
out.
we could probably do 8 tomorrow. Yeah, we could probably do it earlier. But yeah, either way, tomorrow, more Dracula.
Good night, everyone.
Have a good night, everybody.